friends, I figured it was finally time for me to make another video. The last one I did was on collards and cornmeal dumplings. It's been a while since I made another one. I just have been busy. But anyway, and this time I decided I wanted to do something that was a special memory for me from childhood. I've been canning like crazy recently. I'm sure everyone's thinking about food storage and, you know, what if there are future events like the one we've gone through over the last several months where you might not be able to go to the grocery store, you might not be able to have things on hand. So people have been canning. You can't even buy pressure canners right now. Same thing with canning lids. We've been doing all kinds of canning. But today I'm going to do something that anybody can can. You don't have to have a special canner for it. This is peach jam. It is so good, and it is a memory from my childhood. You know, my grandmother used to make this when I was a little girl. Well, I'm sure she made it long before I was a little girl, but I remember it from being a little girl because my parents were divorced, and I grew up in Raleigh, but my grandmother lived in Craven County, and she would send giant jars of peach jam with me back to Raleigh when she made some. I don't know if she made it in these jars for everyone. She probably did, but she wanted to make sure I had plenty of it. And plus, when I would come to her house and she would make her delicious biscuits, I'd be able to slather some butter and peach jam on her biscuits, and it was amazing. So anyway, today I'm going to be making some peach jam. I'm going to be canning it and showing you how that works. This is definitely an old school thing to do. And you know, the thing that's so funny to me is I asked my aunt a couple of months ago, I said, how did Dada used to make that peach jam? That was the best peach jam. Did she have a particular recipe for it that you have? And she said, oh, she just used the recipe on the back of the Sure Jell box. So there it is. So I'm going to be using the Sure Jell recipe for peach jam, and it is amazing. So stick with me. Thanks. Okay, this is what you're going to need to make the peach jam. Here's the little Sure Jell recipe right here. You're going to need 3 pounds of peaches. It says 1 lemon, but you can also use bottled lemon juice. In fact, I've heard that bottled lemon juice is better because the acidity in it is more reliable. And then it says 5½ cups of sugar. So there's a lot of sugar in this. And you're going to have 7 cups of jam when you're done. So let's get started. Okay, so the ingredients we have for making this are, we need at least 3 pounds of peaches. And I have the peaches here, and I'm going to be peeling them. I've got a bowl here of water. You can't see this. Anyway, it's got some lemon juice in it just to keep the peaches looking fresh when I peel them and dice them and put them in the bowl. And from there, we're going to be moving on to the next step. Okay, I'm just going to start by peeling these peaches and getting them in some water that has some lemon juice. That is going to help keep them from browning before I've had a chance to get them in the pot to start cooking them down into jam. I know some people call, we've even called it peach preserves, and I guess technically there's a different meaning of jam versus preserves, and a jar of preserves is going to have more pieces of whole fruit in it, and it's not going to be chopped quite as much, but it still seems like I ended up calling this peach preserves when I was growing up. That was what we called it. But the box says peach jam, and I don't want to confuse anyone, so I'm going to call it peach jam. So apparently, if you soak peaches in hot water for a minute, the skins will peel off very, very easily. But I'll tell you, my experience in the past when I've done that is the peaches get a little too soft, and I don't like that. It also makes a difference whether you have freestone peaches or whether you have peaches that are gripping the stone, because the freestone peaches are a lot easier. I don't know if you can see this. They're a lot easier to get the pit out. The pit will just basically come out of a freestone peach. Whereas with the other peaches, the peach will sort of grip onto that pit a little bit. Okay. once I get all these peaches peeled and cut up and put in this bowl with the lemon water, then I'm going to drain them and I'm going to chop them and get my pot ready to cook the jam in. Okay, I've gotten all the peaches peeled. I have put the cut up peaches in this. I add a little bit of lemon juice to this just to keep it from turning. And I use my handy chopper, the same chopper I use for collards, to get these chopped, because the recipe calls for 4 cups of finely chopped peaches, which means not big chunks, not giant slices. And if you just use giant chunks or slices to get 4 cups, you're going to be losing some of the capability of putting more fruit in the jam, because obviously chopping them finely causes them to go down, and it makes more room for you to add more. It's kind of like when you debubble jars and you're canning vegetables or other things, and then you go to add water and you use your debubbler. Sometimes the items will settle, and so then you can add more stuff. So it's similar in this case. You just want to make sure everything is really finely chopped. Okay, now I'm going to get started actually preparing the jam. I have the 4 cups of finely diced peaches here. I've gone ahead and measured out 5.5 cups of sugar. It is very important that you use the amount of sugar in the recipe or your jam will not set like it's supposed to. And then I have my Sure Jell right here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my fruit and my Sure Jell into the pot, and then I'm going to measure in 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. I'm going to turn that on. I'm going to get it going, bring it to a full rolling boil, and then once it starts boiling, I'm going to add sugar. It says in the instructions you can add a half a teaspoon of butter or margarine to reduce foaming if desired. I'm going to do that because I will put butter in anything that I have an excuse to put butter in. So, bear with me. I'm going to go ahead and put in the fruit. This is a half teaspoon. I'm not trying to add more than that because really when it comes to canning, you're not supposed to add dairy. The only time you'll see it is in recipes like this where just the tiniest amount is going to get spread across multiple jars, and that is to stop it from foaming up really bad. I'll go ahead and get that turned on. I'm going to add the Sure Jell. The thing is to get the Sure Jell just mixed in really, really good with the fruit. Let me see if I can get the camera so you can look in here and see what it looks like. Look at there. All those beautiful peaches. So I'm just going to keep stirring this And then once it starts boiling, I'll bring you back and show you when I'll know it's time to add the sugar. I do want to add this. I have sterilized my jars. They are in boiling water, in fact, in the same pot that I'm going to use to can the jam in. But I've just turned the burner off, and I'm going to let those just sit and be nice and clean and ready for me to use when it's time to jar up the jam. Okay, I want you to see this. This is starting to bubble just a little bit. This is not a rolling boil. So, let's see. Of course, now that I've brought the camera over here, it's not bubbling. Oh, there we go. So see, it's bubbling a little bit, but that's not a rolling boil. I need to wait until it's bubbling more rapidly all over before I add the sugar. We are at a full rolling boil. A full rolling boil is when you're stirring the fruit and it's not going to stop boiling just because you're stirring. Like, it is an intense, intense boil. So that means now it's time for me to add the sugar. And I can't, unfortunately, stir and hold the camera at the same time, so I'm going to put this down and stir. Once I get this back up to a full rolling boil, now that it has the sugar in it, I'll have to boil it for 1 minute, and then that's it. And then it'll be ready to jar up. Look how it's starting to look kind of syrupy. It's kind of clear, and pretty soon it's going to start boiling again. But again, I'm going to have to get it up to another full rolling boil, and then once it's boiled for a full minute with the sugar in it, then it'll be ready to turn off and jar up. One more thing I should mention is you're actually supposed to be stirring this constantly, because if you don't, it'll stick to the bottom of the pot, and nobody wants that. Okay, I'm up to a full rolling boil. See how I'm not able to stir that down, so I'm going to put my timer on for 1 minute. I'm going to keep stirring. Look at that. And see how those peaches have cooked down to just about nothing? They're all incorporated into the jam now. I'm going to just slide that over, turn my timer off, and I'm going to get things set up so we can jar these up. Okay, now I'm going to take these jars out of the water where I have been keeping them hot. And you see how I put that tongue all the way into the jar, because that way it doesn't slip out of my hand and spill boiling water on me and burn me. I'm just putting these right here. Okay, now I'm going to fill up these jars. I have the lids back here in a bowl. Hopefully you can see that, where they've been kept in hot water. And I'll put the lids on them as I go. And I've also sanitized this this ladle that I'm using, because I want to make sure it's really clean too. And we're going to be filling these jars to within a 1/4 inch headspace. The recipe is supposed to be for 7 cups, but we'll see if this actually fills 7 cups. It might, but it might not. I think it might make it. I think I had one jar that was a little overfull, so I'm just gonna steal a little bit from that jar and add it to this jar. I think that's got it. It looks pretty good to me. So now, I gotta make sure all the rims of all the jars are clean, because we don't want anything sticking to the top of the jars that's going to prevent them from sealing correctly. Got it. Now just closing them finger tight. That doesn't mean you tighten them super duper tight. You just want to make sure they're on there tight enough that the lids aren't going to come off while they're in the canner. Alrighty. And now I've already got water boiling in my water bath canner, and I'm going to put these jars in the canner. They're hot. Know that you do not ever want to put cold jars into a hot canner, but you don't want to put hot jars into a cold canner, because then you're going to have glass shattering in your canner, and that can be a mess. Okay, I have all of my jars in the canner. It's actually just a pot. It's not technically a canner, a water bath canner. Ideally, I would be using a deeper pot than this, but this is the one that I have. I have a pressure canner, and it's a lot bigger than this, but the problem is when you're water bath canning, you have to have the jars covered with water at least an inch. And this pot is the one in which I can do that and still bring it to a boil on my stove, because the problem is with my pressure canner, it's so big. In order to totally fill it with water and get the jars covered, it takes my stove forever to get that water boiling. So it's different, of course, when you're pressure canning, because you only have to have a few inches of water in the pot. But when you're water bath canning, you have to have the water covering your jars. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to have these jars in the pot. I'm going to get it up to a boil, and I'm going to boil them for 10 minutes with the jars covered. And then after that, they'll be done, and I'll take them out, and I'll be right back with you when that happens. Looks like time's up. I'm going to get these jars out of the canner, and I'm going to hold the camera this time because I can't hold the tripod or have the tripod here and let you see what I'm doing. So this way you can see what I'm doing. Get that around there. And I'm putting them on a dishcloth, and the reason why I'm doing that is because you do not want to put hot jars on your cold countertop or your cold stove top, because that would be one of those temperature shock things where, again, you could end up with shattered glass. Not to mention all that wonderful jam you've made would just totally go to waste. Let's see. I tell you what, it's tricky holding this camera. I've got so much respect for all the YouTubers who can and do videos of it, because you've got to be kind of coordinated to be able to hold your camera and get these jars and things like that. This is the last one. Oh, they look so pretty, y'all. Look at those beautiful jars of jam. They're gonna be delicious. Okay, that's it, y'all. Peach jam. I hope you enjoy it. If you like this video, please hit the like button below. I'm going to try to get more regular about making these videos, so make sure you subscribe so that you'll know. Hit the little bell to get a notification when I do upload another. Did you hear that? It was one of those pops on those jars. That's awesome. So be sure to hit the bell so that way you'll get a notification when I do upload another video. And share with your friends if you think anyone that you know might be interested in this. I really appreciate you watching. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.